are actually getting roaches in Zerg vs. Zerg. Because again, like 90 million% of players are opting for Baneling busts early on. And almost no one really is doing these sorts of early expands, unless they go early expand into mass Baneling Zergling. So, I mean, very, very unusual to see big roach play, just because with the armor being dropped to 1, and the food cost being up to 2, roaches really are just a little bit too... they feel a little bit flimsy against mass Zergling. They feel even a little flimsier against mass Mutalisk. So I am throwing down plenty of spine crawlers. I'm getting my Baneling up. Notice I have a lot more drones than your average early expanding Zerg. I did recently lose a game where I was trying to do exactly what I said. Oh, make a few Banelings to deal with Zergling busts. Cool. And a player literally straight up roach rushed me and I wasn't really prepared. So I'm making spine crawlers. I intend on rearranging these things. They're in an ugly spot for now. But, you know, one Baneling on the ramp, one Baneling at the run-by path. Just bouncing my queen between these locations, continuing to add on more larvae as I see fit with my energy. But, you know, Zelniq, this looks a little bit funky, his setup. You know, he didn't really have any drones here. But to be entirely honest, he was convinced I was doing a Baneling bust. I actually talked to him after this game, and, you know, he's probably experienced the same thing I have, where every player mass Zergling Baneling. And when he saw these Banelings, he was just like, oh, okay, better make some roaches here to defend. A few more roaches than I think is necessary. And there's some things that Zelniq said after the game that I'm going to note as it comes along, because I think it's pretty essential for understanding any sort of unorthodox strategy. So now you've heard a lot of the build up to this point in the game. So we're going to begin returning back to this idea of getting the mass queen. Zelniq just has a few right now, just one in his expo and one in his main. This, I think, is really important. This is perhaps the most important part of the early stages of the game, is just getting one creep tumor, because if you cannot link up the main and the natural, your queens have no ability to defend both the main and natural from air. A lot of people get this kind of as a convenience in some of the other matchups. You know, they'll get this a little bit early on against Protosses and Terrans if they have one queen, you know, so that way it can bounce back and forth if they're forgetting to add on more larvae. You know, or they'll get the creep tumor because they can't actually afford to build out of all these larvae, so they think, why let it stockpile like this when I can build a creep tumor? That's reasonable in those situations, but here, this is an absolutely essential move that I wanted to highlight quite a bit. So here's me trying to rearrange my creep tumors. I'm still adding on more. Or not creep tumors, these are my spine crawlers, excuse me. And he's doing the smart thing with his roaches. They were originally used for defensive purposes, but now they you don't want to be defensive with them all game. I'm very clearly powering, so, you know, he's going to try to do a little bit of damage here. And as we can see up in the food, he is at 68 food, I am at 58 food, so he's a little bit ahead. He does have these two queens, and he has been making quite a few roaches, quite a large number of them. And now he's getting the +1 upgrade. Excuse me, I recently purchased some delicious strawberries, and some were getting a little bit caught in my esophagus. But no big deal. I would never choke on the Day 9 Daily. That would be rude to you guys. But he's getting the upgrade. This is very normal for what I would call early-ish day beta. In the early days, roaches reigned supreme in this matchup. People would just get hundreds of thousands of roaches, and all their game plan revolved around roaches, getting more, you know, upgrades, getting the queens, and I'm getting the spire up, so he is building many spore crawlers at this point. So, to be entirely honest, at this stage in the game, I was 100% convinced that I had won. Because, this guy spent all this gas on roaches. What does he really expect to do? Just go roach hydra against my Zergling Mutalisk force? Plus, I have total map control, so I'm going to be able to take my gold really, really, really quickly. And as we can see, Zelniq adding on a bunch of queens. And, you know, here was probably the first set of, this is probably, I would actually call it the game-changing moment, is picking off that queen. You know, one queen was out there, and again, I had never seen mass queen, so I was like, oh my god, what? He just sent his queen cross map, that fool, you know. I was like, oh, just, you know, one of those dumb mistakes that happens, you know, once in a million games that you never forget about. Didn't really think much of it. And here, Zelniq is already getting a lot of queens to spread these creep tumors out. So this was a little weird. I saw two queens, and then a third queen. And look, there's one transfuse going down on it. And so remember that I'd killed one queen over here, so there's a second queen falling, the third, and then the fourth queen. And one thing that, it might not mean anything to any viewer right now, but Zelniq said after the game, and this is really wise, and I'm just going to say it, we're not going to think about it too much. He said, that's really what lost me the game, was losing those 4 queens. So we're going to have a chance to think about that and examine that a little bit later, but I just want you to be aware of that, because that just looks like a little bit more of an annoying, you know. Especially because people normally would get queens defensively, you know, like... Let's pause for a moment and think about queens in the context we've seen them elsewhere. People normally get queens when they don't quite have Hydralisks yet, you know, or they don't quite have Mutalisks yet. They're this unit that people have used as a stepping stone for something else. So, for instance, Zerg vs. Protoss, I want to get Hydras because they're great. They're my key unit in the mid-game. But I had to get Zergling speed first, and I think you have a Void Ray coming. I gotta get a queen. If I thought that I could get my Hydralisks up in time, I would totally skip making a third queen. That's how most people have that mindset. Or in Zerg vs. Terran, I know you're going for Banshees right now, and my lair just finished. I can't get my Mutalisks up in time. Gotta make a third queen. That's how people view the queen. So when I saw this number of queens here, when I saw all these queens floating out here, that's exactly what I thought Zelniq was doing. Just this, oh yeah, he's just in panic mode. Yeah, he cannot handle the might of Day 9 Starcraft 1 Mutalisks. And he's getting, again, a little bit interesting, he's getting a third hatchery. This is to keep up queen production. Doesn't that sound weird? Getting a third hatchery for non-stop queen production. And if you think about it, if you do have non-stop queen production here, right when the queen pops, you can vomit larva and then send it into battle. So that timing actually works out kind of nicely. And there's a few things that I'm starting to see here that it didn't quite dawn on me. It's one of those things that you knew was true beforehand, but had never really registered. By upgrading the +1 attack for the roaches, and you know, for a general roach hydra army, the queens also get a +1 attack. So that means that they have a range of a 7 with a damage 10 and a ton of life. And this was coincidentally good timing. The fact that I came in here. I half killed the Spore Crawler because I'm awful. And then I was like, oh yeah, I better whip back around and take care of that one. So, I mean, I'm in here. And then all of a sudden, I think, oh my god, he's going Mass Queen. And look at the range. Look how he's able to just pick off a ton of my Mutalisks. And Queens are an extraordinarily beefy unit. And yeah, this rally point. Again, I was not expecting mass numbers of Queens to be out here. So I'm kind of just starting to be like, oh, geez, oh, gosh. And these creep tumors that Zelniq's spreading early on, absolutely essential because, you know, you need your army to be advancing forward. You need to have that mobility, so you're obviously going to get the creep tumors. And creep tumors do spread faster when you have multiple ones next to each other. This creep does expand at a significantly higher rate. So that's why, you know, if you can get like 4 of them at a time, just go like 4 splat and then like 4 splat, you can actually advance pretty absurdly quickly. So, I mean, right now I'm losing my overlords. I'm starting to fall a little bit behind. Actually, I would call this a horrendous mistake. I'm falling a lot of bit behind. But notice that even before the Overlord started to die, he had pulled back ahead of me in food with his 113 versus 108 food. You can get a really big food army with all these queens coming out. Look at this. This just seems completely absurd. Not even really using that many gas. Not even really having that many units. I'm trying to get in here to pick off some of these reinforcements. And here's one queen. Look at me target fire it. Oh, there's one transfuse. There's a second transfuse. Oh, I managed to kill one by a miracle stroke of luck as he misses like just a single transfuse. And I just want to point out that at this stage of the game, I was doing a lot of stuff that I would call is good, right? I was getting upgrades. I was taking this gold. I had a queen there. She was being active. Here, I'm even getting this +1 attack. I'm even getting Zergling upgrades. I actually have the +1 attack upgrade. I'm noticing that this creep isn't that far ahead, so the queens can't really be that threatening immediately. So I do, so I can do a little picking off action in the main, try to snag anything that's, you know, getting isolated, such as this queen. But, you know, if we go to this unit counting station, I have 20 Mutalisks, and Zelniq has 13 queens. I can't actually kill that with my 20 Mutalisks. I actually can't. And, you know, I'm making Zerglings, because it's some way to spend my money. I have leftover money. I mean, what would you do in this situation? You're against Roach Queen. Not even any Hydralisks in here. Just Roach Queen. Now, look at this battle. Now, I'm actually going to slow this down pretty significantly. This is just, like, miraculous. Like, this is unbelievable how much damage this is doing. And look at this. There's the transfuses that are going to be going off here. And there should be a transfuse coming up. Yeah, there's all these transfuses. He misses a few key transfuses here, and I don't blame him because, you know, it's a little bit hard. How do you get the right angle? That's a little bit of an issue with the 3D interface. You know, like transfusing the queens that you actually want to transfuse. I don't know if you can actually transfuse enemy Mutalisk. That would be kind of cool. But in the meanwhile, all his roaches are still